I want to move on now to the Cy Young Award conversation, because how about this turn of events? It was between really Rick Porcello in the AL and Justin Verlander, and Rick Porcello got 8 of 30 first place votes, while Justin Verlander got 12 of 30 first place votes. Now you're saying, wow, Verlander got more first place votes than the other guys, so why is he not the winner of the Cy Young? Well, I guess some people left him off the ballot, right? And there's this controversy going on saying, well, what the hell, specifically 2 Tampa Bay writers leaving Verlander off the ballot, which may have cost him the Cy Young. So some people are a little outraged, but I want to address that. Cliff Corcoran, I think I pronounced his name right. Corcoran? Cliff Corcoran, we'll go with that, on sportsonearth.com wrote up a really great piece, and I found this quote for him. He says, both Tampa Bay writers failed to include Verlander on their 5-man ballot. That alone did not cost Verlander the award. However, Verlander lost by 5 points. Both Tampa Bay writers could have listed Verlander 4th, and the Tigers ace still would have lost to Porcello by 1 point. As it was, 7 other writers listed Verlander 4th or 5th on their ballots. In fact, as many writers had Verlander below 2nd place, including those 2 Tampa Bay writers, as had him in 1st place. So Porcello, meanwhile, finished in the top 2 on 26 ballots to Verlander's 16. So that's telling. That's telling. There's a lot of parity. Now, what is it to you, the fan, I'm asking you, that makes a Cy Young candidate? Is it, performance based on the success of your team, as well as, obviously numbers? Sure, but how much do you weigh in strikeouts, the win stat, weighted, weak contact? I bring that up because Kyle Hendricks. But really, I'm not sure what these voters are looking at specifically. I know, in my opinion, I think it was Rick Porcello who should have won, and he did, and I'm happy about that. Rick Porcello, what a story. Signs with Boston, has a terrible first season under that contract. They paid him a lot of money, and he kind of crapped the bed in his first year with Boston, but bounces back and wins the Cy Young Award. That's a career changer right there. I know. So really interesting stuff straight up, but I want to dive into the discrepancies between the two. So the stats really were even, I guess, roughly. For the most part, Verlander and Porcello were around the same in a lot of different categories. But Verlander struck out 254, which led the American League, compared to Rick Porcello's 189. And I guess that's a huge tell, right? Because I know Scherzer won the Cy Young in the NL. Spoiler alert. He had 284 strikeouts, and that was by far the most in Major League Baseball. But you look at the win stat, and I'm not sure how much you want to value the win, but Porcello finished with 22. Porcello had a really, really good year, and I know the win stat is really based on the team and the offensive production that you get, and, I don't know. People have a problem with win stats, so I don't like looking at wins, because I just think it creates a false story of the pitcher's season. But Rick Porcello, 22 wins, that's still very impressive and noteworthy. Verlander had 16. But what I looked at, too, I dove a little bit further, and I kind of looked at the splits because I was curious to see who maintained really the more consistent kind of approach throughout each month. And Porcello was more consistent, straight up. Verlander struggled in April, had a 5.46 ERA, got off to a slow start, and then struggled as well in June, had a 4.73 ERA. And in May as well, he sort of, I don't want to call it a struggling month, because that's a pretty solid month, especially in the AL. The AL is obviously the tougher league to pitch in. It was close to a 4 ERA, but I didn't want to really count that one, but it should be worth mentioning. I look compared to Porcello. Porcello only had 1 month with an ERA over 4. So he was pretty much dominant throughout the entire Major League Baseball season. Porcello finished with a 3.15 ERA, a 3.40 FIP. Now, FIP is a stat similar kind of to war in terms of the fact where it's individual performances and not so much. Because ERA, they have inherited runs and some of these stats that you really can't control. FIP takes into account the league you're pitching in, the ballpark you're pitching in, home runs given up, base hits, and really what you can control as a pitcher. So 340 FIP, keep that in mind, as well as a 1.009 WHIP, walks plus hits per innings pitched, 189 Ks, and led the AL with a 5.91 strikeout to walk ratio and 223 innings pitched. Now, that's some impressive stuff, especially the strikeout to walk ratio. You're not getting guys on base. That also attributes to the positive WHIP. Then you look at Justin Verlander. Porcello finished with a 3.15 ERA. Verlander finished with a 3.04, but his FIP was 3.48. That's a 0.44 increase from his ERA. I mean, not too bad. They're very similar in that regard. Verlander led the American League in a 1.001 WHIP and led the AL in strikeouts, like I mentioned. So, I mean, those stats alone, okay, he beat you in Ks, which pretty much won Scherzer the Cy Young in the NL. I don't want to put it all on strikeouts, but 284 strikeouts, that's domination. Like, come on, he's a power pitcher, unreal. But Verlander, he's considered a power pitcher, and Verlander, too, came back after struggling really the last couple seasons as a starter. This year put it together, arguably a Cy Young Award winner. But this whole story is so interesting to me because only 8 first-place votes were casted for Rick Porcello. And Verlander beats him in terms of leading Major League Baseball in stat categories, and he also beat Porcello in first-place votes. It's a very interesting kind of dynamic there as we look at the AL Cy Young Award winner. It is Rick Porcello, and I agree with the decision. I thought Rick Porcello was the best pitcher consistently throughout the American League just by watching him pitch, not even diving into all the numbers. So I think they did get it right, but it's just, like I said, it's interesting. I want to move on to the National League side of things too, because I was paying close attention to that specifically because 2 of the 3 candidates were Chicago Cubs players. As you know by now, I'm behind the pen. I'm a pretty big Cub fan. By the way, they won the World Series. Whatever. Shout out to 2016 Cubs, who will live forever. But it wasn't a Chicago Cub coming out victorious. It was Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer living up to that mega deal that he signed with Washington, walking away from, what was it, 150 mil or something like that from Detroit, and opting to take a 7-year, $210 million contract to sign with the Nationals. Going from the AL to the NL, you knew that transition was going to be a positive one for someone with such electric and power stuff that Scherzer has. Max Scherzer, man, I had a chance to watch him pitch live. I just wanted to share this with you. And if you haven't gotten a chance to do so, I really recommend you do that because he throws, if you want to see a guy who throws 95 miles an hour with relative ease, that's Max Scherzer. And when he wants to, he'll rear back and throw 97, 98 miles an hour. And it's insane. It looks like it's so easy for him to just go, okay, 95 miles an hour on the black. What are you going to do about it? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that contributes to the fact he had 284 strikeouts. Max Scherzer, huge reason why the Washington Nationals won the NL East and got to the ALDS. But of course, they get bounced first round. Now, you talk about a franchise that is desperate to get out of the divisional series. Boy, I pity the Washington Nationals fans because that was kind of the Cubs for a few years there. Well, in 07 and 08, they couldn't get past the NLDS. So, but I mean, in Washington, it's a little bit worse. But I digress here. Max Scherzer lives up to the hype. Wins his 2nd career Cy Young Award, his first in the National League. Really impressive stuff on that side of things. Let's look at his stats here. In 2016, was dominant, led the NL in innings pitched at 228, 34 starts, hit a sub-3 ERA at 2.96, led the ERA in the NL in strikeouts at 284, led the NL in WHIP in .98, led the NL in strikeouts to walk ratio, 507. Now, I can't argue with those numbers. You just can't. He was so dominant throughout the season. I was rooting for Kyle Hendricks, specifically Kyle Hendricks, because I just love the way he pitches. He's the professor out there. But, MLB voters look at pure dominance, to be quite honest with you. And if you look at Kyle Hendricks finished with an MLB best 2.13 ERA and a 0.979 whip. I mean, that's impressive. And really, to me, what I saw for Kyle Hendricks throughout the entire 2016 season was his ability to induce weak contact. Really, guys weren't hitting the ball hard off of Kyle Hendricks. He was able to locate. He had such great movement with that changeup specifically, and he's able to locate his two-seam fastball on the black. I mean, he's just so fun to watch as a pitcher because you don't really see guys like Kyle Hendricks who have such success as he does with the repertoire. I mean, he throws 89. He tops out at 91, and he's still getting guys out consistently, and he was their best pitcher this year next to John Lester. And John Lester actually finished ahead of Kyle Hendricks, and maybe rightfully so, because John Lester, one, was fantastic in the postseason, and I'm not sure how much that goes into account. I doubt barely at all. But for the most part, John Lester was that rock and is that rock in the Cubs rotation. He was fantastic of that 6-year, $155 million contract. So I guess at the end of the day, I really can't complain. I'd like to see, I'm a little greedy here. Obviously, I'm going to be a little greedy. I'd like to see my boy Kyle Hendricks, maybe even John Lester winning the Cy Young, but Max Scherzer was the right choice in this case. On the AL side, that's up for debate. I'm curious to know your thoughts, so please, if you could, leave a comment down below and tell me, did the MLB writers get this right? Did the right person win the AL Cy Young Award, and did they win the NL Cy Young Award? Let me know down below. I really appreciate you guys listening, and I had fun talking Major League Baseball postseason awards with you, and just want to mention that Rookie of the Year votes went and winners went to Corey Seager of the NL and Michael Fulmer of the AL, while Terry Francona and Dave Roberts were each Manager of the Year in their respective leagues. I have no problem with any of that. Michael Fulmer was a stud in that Tigers rotation. Huge year for him. 3.06 ERA as a rookie. Tigers found a nice little arm right there, and they need it. They need to go younger. And for Corey Seager, he's one of the best players in baseball. He was an MVP candidate this year. Dave Roberts, on the Dodgers side, 28 players on the DL, and he had to kind of deal with whatever Yasiel Puig, whatever that was. He had to deal with him all season. So good job, Dave Roberts. Led him to fourth straight NL West division crown for the Dodgers. And really, I didn't consider the Dodgers a threat, but here they are. Going to the NLCS, getting beat by the Cubs. Love it, love it, love it.